Hello everybody, it's your boy N here. I'm coming at you guys with another YouTube video. So, in today's YouTube video, I want to talk about the first Descendant. And I don't just mean talk about one specific thing, I want to talk about everything regarding this game. This includes stuff along the lines of the direction, where the characters are at, the balance, and what the future for this game looks like. So let's get right on into it. I'd like to start by talking about the most recent Void Vessel update. We are basically just going to call this Void Vessel 2. Now, a lot of people have very mixed opinions about this update. However, personally, I'm a very big fan of this update. I really truly have been enjoying the grind in the swords, and I think that the sword grind overall was perfect. A lot of people will disagree with me on this one because they will not like the way that the grind is in this game, specifically with the sword. However, myself personally, I was a very big fan of it. Now, let's talk about the swords themselves. Were the swords worth the grind? Absolutely not. However, I feel like if the swords were truly stronger on their release, nobody would be complaining about the grind. My case in point for this one is going to be the Last Dagger, debatably one of the best weapons in the game. Now, with the Last Dagger, you were only able to farm it in normal mode for the longest time until Season 3 dropped, and a lot of people used to really hate the farm for the Last Dagger. However, once you basically got the Last Dagger, you were happy and you would basically never look back, and you'd advise people to go get it. You'd mention to them that the farm was painful, but then once it's said and done, it was truly said and done. Now, I feel like if the swords were actually good, this would basically have the same effect and people wouldn't be complaining as much. I can understand that people do not have the right setup for it, and with that, I'd say focus on your setup first and invest in a build that is definitely capable of doing the Void Vessel 2 and then just run it in hard mode. If you're running in normal mode, you absolutely want to be running in hard because the drops are a million times more rewarding and it will cost you much less of your time and even basically half the amount of runs you actually need to do to get the right amount of resources. Now, with the swords, everyone definitely has their own opinion, so let me give you mine. Now, I immediately think off the bat, the swords have a lot of fundamental problems. The movement is my personal biggest problem and the reason I will personally never touch the swords. The movement should at least give you a base 200% sprint speed increase for every single Descendant, at least bringing them up to 1000 sprint speed just as a baseline. If you want to be nice and take it up to 11 or 1200 maybe, this would also be worth it. I honestly think that if we want to be realistic with swords, every Descendant should reach their soft limit, which is the 1440 for every Descendant apart from Bunny, which is the 1600, because it just logically makes sense. Swords should be very freeing, movement wise at least. I think this would logically make sense in the game and would also work very nicely. Now, a lot of people are here to complain about the ammo on swords, and honestly, I'll be completely real with you here. I've not really had too many issues with ammo on swords. However, I think it would be significantly better if you had the option to choose between using ammo and not using ammo. That way, if you use ammo, you can increase damage. If not, you can have a little bit less damage. So that would be an idea. Other than that, the other thing that I would like to talk about is synergies. Now, synergies with the Descendants basically just does not exist. The fact that Enzo's crit ability with his turret on his 4th ability just does not buff sword crit rate is silly. Same with Haley and same with Serena. Now, I specifically mentioned Serena because there was an interview from the developers a while back of them basically mentioning that we are essentially scared to release a weapon that is strong because if we do, it raises the high point of Serena. Given the fact that they've separated weapon and skill resistances and damage anyways, it regardless would not make a difference. Serena, in theory, well, based off the fact that her 4th ability works on multi, doesn't even touch melee damage, so Serena would not even be able to buff the swords anyways. So I think that just in general, they should allow sword and ability synergies to work. What that would unlock is a million more synergies of swords being used, because they can actually be used with gun Descendant setups, which is something a lot of players have already invested in. The grapple movement is also another thing that I would like to mention. I personally always use the grapple flick, as I'm sure a lot of other players do, to just maximize my movement. It's always a fun thing to do. Like, it's just a nice gameplay mechanic that a lot of players definitely use, and the fact that it gets taken away on swords is kind of wrong in my opinion. If anything, the sword should basically double the range of the flick, because you should just have the momentum from it. Now, you do have momentum, but it is a little bit strange. I'm not going to get into it, otherwise I'll be sitting here yapping all day. Now, lock-on would also be a very, very good addition for swords as well. Lock-on, specifically for the shadow, when you do the judgment cut to the closest mob, would be an essential upgrade, and would basically at least make the shadow viable. A lot of players would 100% be using the shadow more if you had that lock-on, and you were able to guaranteed lock on to, for example, an elite, and just shred them. Because when you do actually measure it correctly, and you do manage to lock on and actually hit the elite, the shadow definitely does a decent amount of damage. Now, let's mention deflection. I think logically, swords should have iframes or parries / finishers. If a mob is on very low health or critical levels of health, you should just be able to go up to them and press a button, for example, triangle or Y on Xbox, and, you know, I don't know what button on PC, but we should have short finisher animations, like 2-second animations of us just performing a finisher on the mobs. This would also be another nice engaging gameplay mechanic. It's simple, small quality of life like this, which would 1,000,000% make the swords feel more significant. Because honestly, I love nuking with Bunny, but there's one thing that gives a man's heart true satisfaction, not even just a man, a woman as well, is a absolute brutality with a sword. Watching your character slash a mob down in a brutal way, it's just pure satisfaction and testosterone for the brain. So we definitely want some of that. Parries / iframes as well, and deflection. Deflecting ranged attacks from mobs would also be very nice if you time it correctly. Same thing with parry. If the mobs are gonna scratch something, having a nice like sword sheathing sound, or like sword scraping against each other sound, would be really cool with that, and allowing you to basically follow up at a advantage and use an ability point and blank in their face would be something cool like that. You know, something like that would be nice. I just want to mention that I'm basing all of this off the initial release of swords. If you are watching this video 20 years in the future, if YouTube still exists at that point, and the swords are actually decent, I just want to basically mention that this is what is going on with the swords right now. Now, I want to go over the fact that there is also blocking with swords, because I know a lot of players don't block with swords, myself included. With the Deus, you get a 50% damage reduction, and with the Shadow, you get a 0.35% damage reduction, so that's just useful information to know. That pretty much wraps up this core section for the update. So now let's talk about the other biggest part of the game, and that is going to be the characters and the Descendants in this game. The Descendants in this game have something called an identity crisis. Specifically, what I mean by that is the fact that there is two main types of Descendants, and that is a mobbing and a bossing Descendant. Over the time in this game, releases used to be focused on one thing and one thing only. They would be focused on mobbing Descendants only or bossing Descendants only. Haley was an example of a Descendant that was basically a bossing Descendant, and Bunny is an example of a mobbing Descendant. Now, with recent updates and buffs to characters and so on and so forth to make them viable in later level content, Descendants have been massively buffed, and I feel like there is basically just 3 or 4 main Descendants, and the rest of them are optional. You are 1,000,000% going to use Serena / Glay, and you are 1,000,000% going to use either Freyna, Bunny, or Ines. This is basically a non-negotiable whilst playing this game, and if you are going to use Descendants, you basically have them as your main options. If you invest in none of them and still play the entire game and max everything out, I have nothing but absolute respect for you. But there's basically not very much variety. It's mobbing or bossing, and with the way content works right now, you can absolutely steamroll it because we are very far ahead in terms of buffs. Descendants keep getting buffs, but the content doesn't ever receive any buffs to basically match it. And I think that with the way that it is going, the game is essentially gonna pivot towards nerfing content, which it already has done several times, and just keep buffing Descendants. And they claim that they want to get all of the Descendants up to a similar baseline, and their baseline for mobbing Descendants is Ines, and their baseline for bossing Descendants is Serena. Very, very, very questionable / borderline insane baselines. Serena, overall, her kit is just too tuned as a Descendant to make her as a basic god in this game, and Ines has an ability kit which is again nothing short of busted. So having them as the baseline either means that content scaling in this game needs to go ridiculous in terms of their future releases, or just the fact that they have to eventually start nerfing. Now, the developers stand by a no nerf policy in this game, so make do with that what you will, but it essentially means if you ever like a character, you don't really need to worry about them getting nerfed. It's not healthy for the long term of the game, in my personal opinion, but that's just the way that it is. Now, with the future of Descendants, I don't know where exactly it is going. In terms of the fact that you are essentially getting cross-element Descendants now, if you use Wave Eruption with Bunny / Blair, you can change elements. You can literally have a chill Blair or a non-attribute Bunny, or a toxic or fire Bunny if you really want. Same can be said with Nell, Serena and Sharon using Storm Bullet. Now, Storm Bullet is not going to be as effective as Wave Eruption, I feel. It's a bit back and forth, specifically on Serena. But with Nell and Sharon, it is very, very good. So that is something that is there. Now, I just think that it's a matter of time before they start introducing crossing elements on Descendants to basically keep up with content. Again, I still think that a lot of Descendants are still way too strong in the current state that they are now. But if we're going to keep scaling Descendants to ridiculous strengths, we need the content to match it. Like I said, you either go Bunny Freyna or Ines or Serena Glare, or you use someone else, and they will work, of course, and trust me, take it from me, I put 60 catalysts into almost every Descendant in this game. I promise you, if there's a build, I've probably done it / made it work. And all the Descendants are a basic change of pace, but if you want to be efficient, you kind of have to go ridiculous with, you know, how you play it. And a basic build on a Descendant is 10 catalysts, a trigger mod, a maxed out arcade tree, a golden reactor and full golden components with gold cores. So that should essentially be the baseline for what they use to test everything, at least in my opinion. That about wraps up what I think of the Descendants. Okay, so next up, let's talk about the content in this game. Now, content in this game is scarce, and I think that is me being generous. There is very, very little to do in this game, and if you disagree with me, hear me out real quick. The dungeons that we have on the map for the 400% and for basically everything else is basically all we've ever had since the release of this game. We've not had a single new dungeon release. The same locations, Kingston, Sterile Land, Hagios, Fortress, all of these same locations, Hell Echo Swamp even, all these locations have stayed the exact same since release, and I'm not counting Sigma Sector and Void Vessel as a dungeon, or even Purge for that matter, because they are completely separate game modes. We've got to look at them for what they are, and the fact that majority of this game's content still absolutely relies on these dungeons. If we were to split it into a percentage, I would still say 75% of this game's content relies on the dungeons to basically get everything in the game. Then another 10% relies on Purge for scaling your builds up and everything, because you're still going to get your catalysts and everything inside of these dungeons, so that's something you're repeatedly going to be coming back for. And then using Purge to scale up, beating Challenge when you can, and hell, even the Colossi are basically optional now. So if we do look at content, aside from running dungeons, running Purge to level your stuff up, or hell, even running Sigma to get your nano compound and quantum crystals to basically level your gear up, still comes under the same thing. The only common factor between all of these missions is that you need to run it a very, very, very high amount of times. If you want to get every single weapon in the game and you want to put X cores on them in all gold with very, very good stats / max stats, you're going to be running over 1,000 vessels, over 1,000 purges with no problem. Same can be said for Sigma Sector. If you are going to invest in getting every single external component set and stuff like that, you're going to be running a lot of this. Now, if I was to base this off an average player, they will basically just do the absolute bare minimum. An average player would probably have 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 external component sets with not even the correct stats, and they will just slam cores onto it anyways, which you just get passively from basically every mod at this point, and then they're going to be done with it. They'll say that we've got the right set, we might not have the right stats, and this would definitely affect their builds in the future. Now, you're just going to be doing the same thing over and over again. There is absolutely no variety. It's just a difference of whether you want to jump around in a absolutely grey zone, whether you want to jump around in a orange zone, or whether you want to jump around in a zone that's back and forth with the dungeons and stuff like that. For example, Bunny right now, as you can see in the gameplay on screen, she has no problem with bossing, and this is something that I was talking about previously. Character synergies and stuff like that just don't make any sense when one character can basically do everything in terms of content. The mobbing content should 1,000,000% just be left to the mobbers like Ines and Freyna, and bossing content should be left to bosses like Glay and Serena. But I think the crossover between content and the boss, making every character capable of doing everything, is a surefire way to just make your players even more lazier. If you were to tell a new player that here is the bunny build, just copy this exactly, and here is this build, and here is this build, and they get bunny given to them the moment they enter the game, you're just going to create a player that will just use bunny for absolutely everything, and until they basically know what they're doing, they're just going to be throwing in public lobbies and stuff like that. You want to be encouraging your players to try out new Descendants, not just based on, you know, one character can do all. It's a back and forth, but I feel like the content with this game is very, very mix and match. They want to focus on newer players significantly more than endgame players, and with the endgame content in this game, it's basically being pushed to fresh players, and they just don't have the capability or the time or the care to farm the items that make the character work. Like I mentioned with the cores on the external components, if you slam HP and defense on every single one of them, you don't need a HP module on your build, but a lot of new players won't even bother with that. And if you just use Bunny, you can just nuke everything anyways. So what difference does it really make? The overall content in this game is very, very meaningless, and it's basically running the same mission again and again. Whenever a new content release happens, for example, Void Vessel 2 was the latest one, people sink into it and they want to reach and max everything out immediately to achieve a sense of satisfaction. When you have a countermeasure to that called, you know, make the farm painful, people will go to complaining immediately. Over time, players in this game have been nothing but spoiled by the developers. This is to do with the fact that the developers fear losing players, so much so to the point where they will listen and basically do absolutely everything the community wants. For example, let's talk about some characters. A lot of characters in this game have never ever seen a nerf, and their policy was no nerfs. The one time a character did get nerfed was the Ines incident, let's just call it that. They nerfed Ines from basically not having line of sight on her first ability, and people went absolutely feral. I do kind of understand it because the way she felt as well at the time was a very different, and they fixed her 2 weeks later. But at that point, the damage was already done. If they wanted to take their time with nerfing Ines, they shouldn't have put a timer on it, and they should have made sure she plays the same, because after 2 weeks and the second Ines update where they claimed to have rebalanced her, she felt basically as before, but just significantly weaker compared to her insane levels of power. Ines with the correct build is now stronger than previously as well, which is insane. But the nerf turned out to be a buff in disguise because people are just running better Ines builds now. And even if you do want to use Ines in the old way that she was before, you can use her in that exact way. You just have to build for it. And that brings me to the basically the end of content. I do think that the developers absolutely need to stand up for themselves. When the game was in pre-season / season 1 or 2, the developers mentioned season 3 being their dream vision for this game. I feel like the moment the developers got review bombed and the game got heavily affected by said view bombing back when the Ines nerf did happen, the developers basically gave up on their own idea of what this game should be, and they just wanted to conform to the community. They have lost players and they are essentially terrified of losing players again. Serena, even at this point, is nothing more than a looming problem for the developers. Every single time the developers want to do something, they have to be mindful of Serena. I mentioned this before, I'll mention it again. In an interview, the developers basically kind of admit the fact that they have to nerf every single weapon before its release because Serena is going to fucking make the whatever weapon insanely mental, and it's just going to be unfair to the other Descendants on that. So as long as content is around, it's going to be the same releases over and over again. I don't think this is going to be something that will change. Next up, let's talk about monetization and player pleasing, or gooning. So with this, the battle pass. Now, a lot of games commonly have a battle pass, and this is something that, you know what, I can completely get on board with. Fortnite's got a battle pass, hell, Tekken's got a battle pass. Basically majority of the games, even COD, has battle passes right now. So having a battle pass in a game is completely acceptable, I feel, at this point. However, when you introduce a 1 month limited pass where it's basically nothing but skins and a little bit of cosmetics, and make it double the price of the original pass, is where I think it's taking the piss / borderline milking your audience. Now, if we look at the actual content in this pass, that being the skins, the catalysts, and hell, even the swords and the mutant cells. By the way, this is literally bugged. The value of this pass does actually exceed what it is. So the pass, if we look at it from a what you actually get back out of it standpoint, is actually 100% worth it. However, it's just the fact that it exists and just, you know, is a thing, is something that I don't think I can get on board with. Like I said, I don't mind an additional pass. If it's a free pass or whatever, that's completely fine. Make it a pass that you can only access after you hit like level 100 on your battle pass, for example. Or make it just a pass that is the same price as the actual battle pass. That way, players are kind of expecting it when you mention a pass. You can release other passes in the future, and you will basically have the same price, and you know, it would keep confidence between the developers and the players. And I've already mentioned these developers lack anything that's even close to resembling a spine and telling their players to suck it up or essentially get good. Now, if the developers were to do that, it would be an absolute clusterfuck, because all these developers have done is essentially offer every single thing up on a platter to the players in this game. And the biggest platter in this game out of everything is going to be skins. Now, this is a free-to-play game. I can completely understand that they make their money from skins, and I can completely accept that. Do I buy into skins? Hell yeah, absolutely I do. I'm probably one of, maybe if not the only people that spend ridiculous amount of money on skins. I have got almost every single skin for Bunny. Next on, please let me buy the Evo Bunny skin. I will actually give you like £5,000 if you let me buy it. Or like £1,000. I'm not actually that rich, so you know, please, next on, let me buy the Evo Bunny for £1,000. I don't mind. Okay, but with the skins, right, I can completely accept it. Selling cosmetics in a game, whether it be spawns, whether it be back attachments, or whether it be hair or skins, is completely acceptable. The second tier to skins I'm gonna go in is the lounge. Now, there's skins for the characters that are, you know, cool. We've got like a cyber samurai skin for the males. We've got like genuinely nice outfits for the females and stuff like that as well. But when the skin, oh god, okay, right, when the skin is basically nude and see-through, it kind of raises some questions. Nexon do like to push the limit to the point where you can like see through skins and nudity is like basically an actual thing. But the players in this game want progressively more skimpy skins. It's very, very, very worrying for me as someone who doesn't care for skimpy skins and wants cooler skins. It makes me realize that, you know, Nexon are forever going to focus on the audience that gives them the most money. And that's the ones where there's skins with camel toe on it, or skins where you can see the Descendant's nipples. That's going to be the skins that people want the most. And that's just never going to change. Sex sells, and regardless, the power of horny is too much for a lot of people who play this game, to the point where they don't care for the game and the actual mechanics or the content in the game, and they basically just show up for the horny. Now, I'm not going to say that banish these players, because of course, you know, players for this game are players and I have no right to say that anyways. But when your reputation focuses on marketing that basically semi-sexualizes your characters or pushes your characters in seductive environments and stuff like that, or just shows them with skins that are seductive, you kind of have to expect that this is what you are going to get back. And overall, Nexon are definitely making money off this. If you saw the anniversary stream for their 1 year anniversary, they announced the top 3 selling skins in this game, and to absolutely no one's surprise, all 3 of them were bikini skins. Don't worry guys, we've already got 3 bikini skins, but a 4th one is coming. I'm counting the Valby and Viesa preseason ones as bikini skins because they are. But yeah, okay, right, we're gonna get more bikini skins though, don't worry. If you're worried about anything guys, just remember more bikini skins are on the way to save everything. The content might not matter, but the bikini skins do. Okay, I'm sorry, but yeah, the lounge. And don't get me wrong, I don't actually hate the lounge because of the fact that it exists. I just hate the fact that they dedicated resources to making it. And bear in mind, they announced Lounge 2 before Lounge 1. I don't know where this game is going to be going in terms of direction. We'll have multi-elemental Descendants, we'll have fucking Lounge 3.0 where your Descendant can come out and fucking tug you off through the screen. I don't know what to tell people, and even as a creator, I kind of have to play the positivity role at times, even when things are looking grim and some of the updates aren't looking the best. I still have to play the positivity card, because if everyone fearmongers the game / goes crazy on it, it definitely will have a knock-on effect. I mentioned this before, if all of the creators leave for this game is essentially screwed. Another thing that I wanted to mention is just the fact that I can't say for certain whether this game will exist in several years' time, or whether this game will exist at all in hell, even another year's time. Based on direction, I truly hope that the developers decide to lock in and choose and focus on themselves and what they want out of the game, even though it's probably gooning. I just hope this game starts eating into the true potential it has. If you have played this game, which I'm sure majority of the people who are watching this have, you know that this game truly does have the potential to become something very special. Fixing the melee, fixing the swords, fixing a lot of the just base problems of this game, and working with the community / creators and everyone else to make this game into something that is going to be a enjoyable experience for end game players as well as new players. You know, add some endless mods, give the end game players something to do, because right now there's a lot of players that are logging in for the sake of dailies, getting off the game and basically not coming back until next day. and just, you know, running a few dailies and calling it quits. You want to be keeping as many players as you can, especially with this game and the way that it is. Updates can definitely bring players back, but the updates don't usually last long, and people are very quick to express their anger about the fact that they can't get the swords within 5 minutes. That's just an example of it. But I do think this game will take time to reach its potential, especially with like just the state of the game right now. It's definitely not in a good state, but it's definitely not in the worst state. Technically, based off gameplay and everything else, it's in the best state ever. It's in the best state that it's ever been in. But I don't really want to go around saying that, because I still think that there's a lot more that could be done. Now, I still believe in this game 100%, and I want this game to take its time, work on the updates, and stop fucking rushing things. Swords or melee is a prime example of something that needed more time. I would much rather the developers hopped onto the dev stream and said, sorry for the fucking 50 millionth time, and said we need more time to make the melee, and give us updates as it goes. Be transparent with the community as much as you can, and the community are going to be more than willing to reciprocate and work back with you guys. That's just my 2 cents. Now, I know this video has been a long one, so if you have made it all the way to the end, pat yourself on the back and message me on Discord so I can send you a cookie. Other than that, I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you did, please do smash the like button. And I know this video isn't what you were expecting, and I don't want this to be a doom and gloom video, because I do think I've fairly mentioned the positives about this game as well as the negatives. So yeah, we're just gonna go with that. Also, Haley sucks on the lava turtle. Please fix this. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one now. Peace.